Hello and welcome to DW's International Reporters Magazine World Stories with me, Layla Harak. Coming up on today's show, fruitastic creations from Bulgaria. We meet a duo who create artful bouquets from heaps of fruit. Also ahead, we hear from a Palestinian filmmaker about the difficulties he faced making a critically acclaimed documentary. And we head to Hungary to learn about a very special Virgin Mary. Plus, a bright idea lights up Rwanda. That's all coming up. But first, scientists in Brazil are developing nanotech applications that could one day impact all of our lives in a big way. Researchers at the Federal University of Minas Gerais are engineering carbon nanotubes that are smaller than the eye can see to function as devices that, when injected into a patient, can be used for targeted drug delivery. Sounds like science fiction to you? Well, although it's difficult to picture, there are loads of potential uses. But introducing a foreign object into the body isn't without its risks. Simone Pio from Rede Minas Television reports.
Nanotechnology can play an important role in finding cures for severe diseases. Comprehensive research in the field is indispensable and has only just begun.
A protein used in isolation has a brief half-life and quickly disappears in the body. Often it doesn't even reach the target cells necessary for the immunological response, which is triggering production of antibodies. The so-called delivery systems are considerably more efficient. It helps the proteins get into the immune system faster.
All over the world, research is underway to find intelligent medications that are able to get at the cause of a disease without side effects. The development of carbon nanotubes has given these efforts new impetus.
These are tiny tubes consisting of carbon molecules. I'm talking about tubes with a diameter of just 1 nanometer. Their development first started over 20 years ago. These are materials with exceptional mechanical and thermal properties. And these tubes form a perfect nanometric needle as well. So it's a very versatile material.
É material que tem uma versatilidade muito grande. Ele pode ter várias aplicações.
Carbon nanotubes still have to be approved for use on human beings, but that's not the only obstacle nanotechnology has to overcome. It also has to be proven that nanomaterials don't contaminate the environment or upset the ecological balance. Even so, this new science of materials invisible to the naked eye is already affecting our daily lives. The Federal University of Minas Gerais, UFMG, is at the forefront of carbon nanotube research in Brazil. The researchers here have already been producing the material using a variety of processes for 14 years now. The institute is now working on developing more resistant synthetic materials and cement, and it's collaborating on a number of other projects. In this lab, nanotubes are playing a role in research on a vaccine for dengue fever.
Our goal is not to develop the first dengue vaccine, but to look into a vaccine that's affordable. Even if another vaccine is developed that's effective, we'll keep working on one of our own that costs less. Our vaccines are subsidized by the state, which lowers the cost and makes them more lucrative.
Dengue fever is a problem in tropical regions. The many prevention campaigns have made little real impact. In Brazil in 2012, some 65,000 people contracted dengue. 23 died. Another disease nanotubes could help fight is cancer.
70% of patients diagnosed with cancer will eventually receive chemotherapy. In modern medicine, a basic principle of allopathy is that medications aren't supposed to have any side effects.
Here, too, nanotechnology could help. At the Fiocruz Institute, they are testing the use of carbon nanotubes for a vaccine.
A novidade desse trabalho
What's new about this work is that for the first time, we're using carbon nanotubes as a vehicle to deliver the vaccine. This is an image of a carbon nanotube. And in the next image, you see the tube's surface that the protein bonds to.
Unlike the dengue virus and other disease-causing agents, cancer cells come from our own bodies, and so they are not recognized or attacked. This is known as immunotolerance, and that's why conventional vaccines won't work here. The first challenge is to trigger an immune system response. The second is to get the vaccine to protect against a range of cancers.
Here we're getting the vaccine ready to inject into mice. It has a coloration typical of carbon, black. The proteins are already bonded. Thousands of molecules are contained in this tube.
Healthy mice are given 2 doses of vaccine 21 days apart. Then they are injected with cancer cells. The results show no or only very slow tumor growth, with an overall survival rate of some 75%.
Chemotherapy and radiation therapy are very invasive and have lots of serious side effects. So I believe developing less invasive medications is very important and valuable.
In Brazil, over 7 billion euros are invested in nanotechnological research every year.
Well, in the meantime, we may just have to eat an apple a day to keep the doctor away. And speaking of apples, in Bulgaria, 2 bankers have raised playing with food to an art. They run a thriving business creating unique fruit bouquets that stand out. And according to Nova TV's Zivko Konstantinov, they are not only a visual delight, but a sumptuous treat as well. Take a look.
Normally, they work in a bank. This is their second source of income. Martin and Velko use every minute outside of their daily job to arrange bouquets. But not the typical ones. These are made of fruit.
This is how we prepare the fruits, which we will then arrange in the basket. I will cut the pineapple in the form of a daisy.
We take the sliced apples and we fix them on wooden sticks. After that, we dip them into chocolate so that they're well coated. We shake off the excess so that the chocolate coating doesn't become layered.
This procedure is repeated until every piece of the bouquet is ready. What's the strangest bouquet you've ever made?
Well, recently we made an X-ray machine.
The countdown begins. Now the fruit basket is ready.
Compared to real flowers, flowers are much more durable and can be moistened with water. If you spray the fruits with water, nothing will happen. There is one small problem, though. Fruit bouquets only last 24 hours.
That's only a minor disadvantage. The major advantage is that you can admire the bouquets and then you can eat them.
За новините на Нова, Живко Константинов.
Now on to the amazing story of a Palestinian farmer who a couple of years ago got a video camera to film the early life of his 4th child. As an Israeli separation barrier was being built at the same time, he also documented the shaping of the nonviolent resistance in his village. Little did he know that his footage would soon become a first-person account of this development, and that it then became the first ever Palestinian documentary to be nominated for an Oscar. PBC's Haroun Amaira caught up with the filmmaker.
In 2005, Emad Burnat started videotaping peaceful demonstrations in Bila'in, near Ramallah in the Palestinian territories. At the time, he never would have dreamt that one day one of his documentaries would be nominated for an Oscar, for what many see as the most important film prize in the world. 5 Broken Cameras tells the story of a journalist chronicling the Palestinians' fight for their rights.
1 billion people watch the Academy Awards. This way they can learn about the history of Palestine, the reality of life there, and the suffering of the Palestinians as depicted in the lives of the inhabitants of Bil'in.
Burnat's documentary observes the peaceful resistance in Bil'in and the occupation forces who broke 5 of his cameras. He suffered gunshot wounds and an almost constant danger of suffocation. But he remained undaunted and finished his work with camera number 6.
The idea corresponds to my personal story and my 7 years of experience with the camera. It gives Western audiences a chance to consider the Palestinian cause through the lens of personal experiences.
Burnat chronicles events in Bil'in and the Israeli security forces' treatment of the villagers and those who support them. He includes the birth and first years of his son, Jibril, and records his first word, wall. At a very early age, Jibril learns the concept of homeland and its significance. Some of his friends even die violent deaths in connection with the occupation.
I picked up the camera to document events in the village. During that time, my 4th child, Jibril, was born. My intention was to report on the situation in the village, on the demonstrations and activities. At the same time, I wanted to observe my son growing up and how my closest friends and family were living.
5 Broken Cameras was nominated for an Academy Award in the documentary category. It's already won a good 30 international awards and been widely shown. It bears witness to the occupation the Palestinian people continue to live under. 5 Broken Cameras didn't win the Oscar, but the village of Bil'in won so much more: the withdrawal of the security forces and a part of its own land back for the villagers' use.
And now to Hungary, where in a small town, a ritual takes place on every second Friday when the statue of the Virgin Mary is dressed up in a different outfit. And not just any dress will do. Elaborate gowns and unique cloaks from all over the world adorn this devotional statuette. Her dress collection is so extensive, it got its own small museum. MTVA's Bertha Olivia has more.
They've been dressing our devotional statue since 1747, when the church was consecrated. Countess Katalin Széchenyi donated the first cloak for the statue. The Virgin Mary statuette is dressed every second Friday morning. The oldest cloak we have dates back to 1852, while the newest one was made in September 2012. These little cloaks express the gratitude of individuals, families, and the local churches, because with the help of Virgin Mary, they grew close to Jesus here in this special place, and God heard their prayers. There are 7 different dress patterns for clothes from different parts of the country. One day, a young mother phoned us. She asked me to send one of these patterns to Budapest. She said she needed it to fulfill a pledge. 2 years earlier, she had prayed here, in this holy place, for a baby. God granted her wish, so she wanted to make a cloak for the statuette based on the dress pattern. It gave me great pleasure to send the pattern to her, especially when I heard the voice of her baby over the phone. God had heard her prayers. Imre Sabo, who was the church deacon, founded the Museum of the Cloaks of the Virgin Mary. My task is to preserve these tributes that symbolize the gratitude of people whose prayers came true.
The statuette already wore this Karlocha-style cloak. What about the Buzak today? It's beautiful. It's been a long time since she last wore this cloak.
A lot of the garments were sent from abroad. Madonna of the Hungarians, Mary of Andocs, say your prayers for the Hungarians who are living abroad. November the 1st, 1970, Gyula Borbély, Venezuela, Caracas. Here we see a photo of the Borbély family. They donated several dresses. This way the museum became a symbol of respect for the Virgin Mary and the unity of the Hungarian people. I'd like to show you the oldest cloak in our collection. It dates back to 1852. It was donated by Countess Cili Bouquets, and it's made of blue velvet, which is the most robust cloth. This cloak is the most precious piece in our museum. As the statue came from Karlocha, people have been sending Karlocha embroidery and similar patterns for several centuries. These little cloaks stand for the visitor's affection. I find it very important for this dress collection to keep growing, because it preserves folk patterns from all regions of Hungary. Moreover, for me as a priest, these intricately detailed folk patterns express the deepest affection of people's hearts. And every stitch expresses the dressmaker's fondest devotion.
Now, turning to Africa, what's easier than switching on the lights? Most of us don't give it much thought, but in sub-Saharan Africa, millions live without electricity. When night falls in rural areas of Rwanda, businesses can't operate and students can't do their homework. Now, a team of engineers and entrepreneurs are plugging into entire communities and hooking them up with LED lights that use solar or manpower, bringing light where once there was darkness. Carl Gierstorfer reports.
When the sun goes down in equatorial Africa, it gets dark within minutes. Here in rural Rwanda, there's no electricity. A kerosene lamp is the only way to defy the darkness. 12-year-old Rebecca does her homework in the pale lamplight. A tragic accident when she was tiny scarred her for life. Her mother, Vestine, will never forget that moment of inattention.
She was still a baby and was sleeping. I went outside briefly, and when I came back, the kerosene lamp had fallen onto the floor. The curtains had already caught fire. I tried to stamp out the flames so the fire wouldn't spread, and a piece of flaming curtain fell onto Rebecca's face and burned her.
In addition to causing accidents like this, kerosene accounts for 150 million tons of carbon emissions annually. It's a fossil fuel that damages the climate. So in the capital Kigali, a team of inventive engineers and entrepreneurs are working on an alternative. After all, the mobile phone industry has already shown that technological innovation can thrive in remote regions. But Samir Haji, the driving force behind the project, knows there's a major obstacle.
It's charging? Yeah, it's charging. Okay. But the reality is that in 1970, 4% of sub-Saharan Africa had access to electricity. In 2011, it was 10%. 6% added to the grid over the past 40 years. It's not really a fantastic record. And so we recognize that and are trying to develop a solution here that's going to address the problem immediately.
Bright LEDs are a first step. Since using them reduces carbon emissions, they generate carbon credits, money that Samir reinvests. Samir and his colleagues are testing their Nuru lights in a pilot project. They hire local entrepreneurs who know their customers very well. Demand was enormous, but there was the issue of how to recharge the batteries. At first, they were experimenting with solar technology, but they soon recognized that that was too short-sighted.
Although there is a common perception that the sun is always shining in Africa, there are many months during the year, during rainy seasons, for example, where the sun isn't shining as you would expect, and solar isn't the most reliable technology. So, we looked at solar initially when we were doing product development, and, we decided that, there was another untapped energy source in rural Africa, which has been used for centuries, and that's human power.
Entrepreneurs become energy providers. Their muscle power feeds a simple generator. 20 minutes of pedaling can recharge 5 batteries. That costs 10 cents a light, a fraction of the price of kerosene. With normal use, the batteries last a whole week. What could be more efficient? Martin Uwayezu earns money both by recharging batteries and by selling the lights. And he has plenty of customers.
My business keeps growing and growing. Last year I sold 175 Nuru lights, and I think this year I can almost double that to 300.
The LED lights aren't just brightening up everyday life in rural Rwanda, they're also helping to tap economic potential. Daniel is one of many fishermen in the wetlands along the Akanyaru River. He's using soap as bait to catch nocturnal catfish. The bait is prepared during the last minutes of daylight and then set out. As soon as it's dark, the bait has to be taken in again. Orientation is difficult in the marshes. So many of the fishermen here have now bought Martin's Nuru lights. It makes their work much easier. Reeling in the nets and laying out the bait again used to be much harder with kerosene and flashlights. In a few hours, a dozen catfish are caught. Profit margins are tight, so Daniel and his fellow fishermen have to use the night as efficiently as possible. It's only since they've had the LEDs that the catch has become really profitable. Now the fishermen can finally put a little money aside.
These LEDs have really changed my life. I used to use an electric torch and had to spend lots of money on batteries. Almost nothing was left for me. You have to understand I was penniless. I come from the street. But now that I can cover my costs, I've been able to buy a house for 250,000 francs. And I can even get married.
Making use of equatorial nights far from the power grid has become easier and safer thanks to LED technology. Rebecca has been scarred by kerosene, but she's looking optimistically to the future. At least the darkness will no longer keep her from studying.
Well, that's our show for today. Thanks so much for joining us. We're out of time, but you can always watch us online at dw.de/World Stories. We're also on Facebook. Drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. Now, here are this week's Picks of the World. See you next time.